In today's story, we have a woman who seems like she would have done anything for her partner, but he betrayed her trust anyway. When a new woman comes into their life, things start to fall apart really quickly. If you want to know how this story ends, get yourself a coffee and grab a bowl of popcorn so we can get into it.
Me and my ex-partner James are both 32, and we were together for almost 16 years. We started dating at 16. We went to the same school, college, and university. We're not married, but we do own a house together, and this story is about how all that went to hell. In February of 2022, a new girl who we'll call Annette joined the company that James worked for, and they immediately hit it off. He came home one day and said that a new girl had started, and that I'd get on really well with her because we're so similar, with a lot of common interests. Up until now, James had never shown an interest in any other woman, so I had no idea what would unfold. We started playing board games after they finished their shifts on Sunday, along with a few other friends, and things started off fine. But by week 3, I had noticed they began flirting, and she would always sit next to James. I thought it was harmless flirting, and in fear of appearing like a jealous girlfriend, I let it slide. We carried on like this for a few weeks, as me and Annette became friends. In March, I noticed that James was on his phone a lot more. One evening, he came home after work and asked to talk. I started feeling sick as he began to speak, asking what my views were on open relationships. I asked him what this was about, and he said that he started talking more and flirting with Annette. They would compliment each other, have inside jokes, tell each other about their own relationships, and how they're not happy with their partners, and how much happier they are with each other. He said that he realized it was wrong and put a stop to it as soon as they both admitted to finding each other very attractive. James felt like our sex life was non-existent, which was due to us losing intimacy with each other over the past few years, and he felt like I didn't find him attractive anymore, and me likewise. Our communication was really bad at this point, but we've never argued and never split up. Speaking to this girl made him feel great, and it carried on until the point he started asking me to open our relationship up to this girl. I told him no, I want to stay monogamous, and I told him to stop messaging her. I asked him if he cheated on me. He said no. He looked upset and told me to think about it. After that, I didn't sleep for the next 2 nights while he slept like a baby. A few days later, we were both watching a show on his computer. His phone was in front of me, and as soon as the screen lit up and buzzed, he immediately grabbed it. That's when I knew he was still talking to Annette. I asked to look at his phone, and I've never seen someone go so pale in a matter of seconds. We argued until he gave in and gave me his phone. He had a new PIN number on it, so I asked him to unlock it. I was under the impression that they only had short texts here and there, because they interacted mostly at work. But when he finally showed me, there were pages upon pages of constant messaging for 3 weeks straight. James isn't a texter, so this shocked me. The first few messages I saw spanned from 2 weeks of her starting the job and 1 week after me meeting her. I couldn't bring myself to read the rest, but the few I did read were stuff like innuendos. They'd been writing little love notes to each other at work, which were discovered by another colleague. James told me it was never sexual and that no nudes were sent. I asked him to delete all the messages and to completely cut all contact with her, which he did, but he kept her number on his phone for work purposes. I said that I didn't feel comfortable with them talking to each other anymore, and he said it would make things awkward at work. He seemed reluctant to cut all communication with her, so I asked him again, "Did you sleep with her?" Again, he said, "No, never." I insisted that he start looking for a new job, which he did, but he didn't leave his work until December of 2022. This entire time, I was beyond paranoid and tried to keep tabs on him every time he had a shift with her. I turned into a completely different person, and it was driving me crazy. Every time I thought he was texting her, he told me I was being paranoid. During this time, we had celebrated our 15-year anniversary. We'd go on days out and trips together, so I thought he was really trying for our relationship. Skip to March of 2023, and I go on holiday to see family for 2 weeks. Due to the time difference, we would only chat briefly when I went to bed or woke up. At the time, I didn't suspect anything at all. I fully trusted him again. He even came and picked me up from the airport. When I got home, he was acting completely differently towards me. He wasn't showing me any affection. We didn't have sex, and he would say the bare minimum to me. At the time, I thought it was because he was extremely anxious about finally proposing to me, as our 16th anniversary was coming up, and he said that was always a big one for him because it meant we'd spent exactly half of our lives together. We had a special trip planned, and this animosity carried on for a few more weeks. In April of 2023, one day out of the blue, he told me that he didn't love me as a lover anymore and only saw me as his best friend. He said he'd give it a go for another week to see if his feelings would change. I was a mess that week. I was in limbo. I couldn't sleep, eat, or work, and I cried every moment of every day. Again, I asked him if he slept with Annette, and he looked me in the eye and said, "No." I told him that I believed him. He finally broke up with me on the 8th, and he screamed and he cried, which is something I've never seen him do before. It scared me, so my final words to him were, "Thank you for telling me. It must have taken so much courage. Promise me that you'll look after yourself and don't do anything stupid." After that, I packed some overnight stuff and left the house to stay with some friends. Being in the house with him was too painful. My friends were and are incredible. They're my rock. If I didn't have them, I don't think I'd be here today. Sadly, he doesn't have friends like mine to support him. So the following week, I told him that he could stay in the house to have space. I messaged some of his friends to let them know that he's feeling fragile at the moment and to please look after him. The day after the breakup, I went to install the Ring app on my new smartwatch. But as I logged in, I noticed him riding away on his bike at 6 p.m. I thought it was odd, but figured that he went to tell his parents. In the end, I was too distracted, so I didn't install it until the next morning. That's when I noticed his bike was still gone, so I figured he stayed the night at his parents'. I deleted the Ring app after this because I didn't want to keep checking on him all the time. But that week, I would go back to the house to grab more of my belongings. I wanted to do it while he was out of the house because seeing him would have been too painful. We were still texting each other, and I was checking in, making sure he was doing okay. To be honest, I was being far too caring, much more than he deserved, and not once did he ask how I was doing. I met up with his parents a week later as we were extremely close. Their 2 cats came into the room, and I said to them that the cats must have found it weird when James stayed with them last week. His mom looked really confused and said that James never stayed with them. I texted James the next day and asked him where he was the night after the breakup. I asked if he was with Annette, but he told me that he went clubbing and then went home with a random woman and slept with her. Later on, I found out that this was a complete lie. I was extremely upset, and we were meant to meet up the following weekend to talk about house stuff. But I said I couldn't bear to see him, and I blocked his number on everything, and told his mom that he can only reach me via her. This brings us to May of 2023, when it all went down. On the 8th, exactly 1 month after he broke up with me, I agreed to meet up with James to talk about the house stuff. I said I'd feel more comfortable doing it at his parents' house while they were on holiday, and it was only a 10-minute walk to our house. We spoke for a bit, and not once did he ask how I was doing. He only talked about himself, which really annoyed me, so I brought up the subject of him sleeping with another woman less than 24 hours after breaking up with me. He told me that he lied. He felt that I didn't deserve the truth because he thought I was spying on him through the Ring doorbell. He actually went to Annette's house and spent the night with her. My blood ran cold. We sat in silence for at least 10 minutes. I said, "Now you're single. You're hooking up with Annette." He said, "No, I'm too much of a mess to even think about it." I asked, "Has she come to the house?" He said, "Yes, she's been there a few times." I asked, "Did she stay the night?" He said, "Yes." I asked, "Did you have sex?" He said, "Yes." I asked, "On our bed?" He said, "Yes." I asked, "Is she at the house right now?" He said, "No." I wanted to throw up, so I grabbed my bag and ran out of the house. He shouted, "Wait!" But he didn't follow me. I didn't know where to go. I was in distress, so I called a friend to meet me at the house, and she said she'd be there as soon as possible. Just as I opened the front door and stepped into the house, James pulled his bike up and shouted for me to wait. I told him my friend was coming in 1 minute and that I didn't want him in the house. He refused and came into the house anyway and sat down in the living room. Next to him was Annette's bag. I told him to get rid of it, but he refused. We had a fight about how he's taken advantage of me in the situation, and how I made everything so easy for him to live his little fantasy life with Annette in my house. He showed no emotion during my tirade. It's like he wasn't even listening. I looked him in the eye and asked if he ever cheated on me. He looked at me and said, "No." I told him, despite all this, I believed him, but he didn't say anything. My friend arrived and I told her to take Annette's bag and drive it to her house, and I'll scour my house for the rest of her things. My friend saw how upset I was and said she'd take me into the garden for fresh air. James immediately told my friend to get me into her car instead, and he'll pack Annette's things and bring it out to us. 25 minutes passed, and he still hadn't come out with her stuff. I wondered how much of her crap was in my house for him to take this long. I went back into the house to find James sat on a chair with a tiny bag of Annette's stuff. I said, "As if it took you 25 minutes to pack that." I went through the house with a fine-tooth comb and found all her things stuffed into his bedside drawer. He came upstairs, pale-looking, and feigned innocence. "Oh, where did you find all of that? I must have missed it," he said. I said he was taking me for a fool and that he had no intention of moving her stuff out of the house. I carried on looking through the house, and then I stepped out into the garden. I've never heard James panic more than he did in that moment. That's when I knew Annette was hiding in the garden. She'd been hiding out there since I stormed out of his parents' house. He didn't follow me because he needed to call her to let her know I was coming. Annette came out of my garden furniture sheepishly and asked to talk. I wasn't getting any answers from James, so I spoke with Annette, and she confirmed everything. It turns out they'd been having an affair for a year, and she's been living with James in my house for the past few weeks while I've been sleeping on a friend's floor. Something I did to give James some space. I told her to leave my house that very day, and I told James to leave the house by the end of the week. He said that wasn't possible. I said if I could pack an entire month's worth of belongings in half an hour, then 5 days is more than enough for him, and more than he deserved. Here I am, 4 weeks later, sharing this story from my home that I've claimed back. James did come over yesterday to take more of his belongings and to discuss what furniture he wanted. He said the only thing he wanted was the garden furniture, I said. That's funny, because that's where Annette was hiding. The only thing I wanted from you was honesty, but I didn't even get that, so no, you're not getting the garden furniture. It felt good to say no, and I had the best sleep I've had in months, sadly. I feel like the saga's far from over, but I'm forever thankful that we never got married or had children together. He acts like I'm the one who hurt him, and he's the one giving me hostility. When I tell him how much he hurt me, there's nothing behind his eyes. It's like he's watching paint dry.
This was quite a heart-wrenching story from OP, but I'm glad she was able to get herself out of that situation. It was disgusting of OP's partner to have an affair with another woman for a year. If he didn't want to be with OP, he should have had the balls to leave and not waste her time. This is a year of her life that she won't get back. I understand that life can be difficult at times, so it's not always easy to exit a relationship, but if you're going to go so far to betray your partner's trust, you owe it to them to come clean. Maybe OP could have met someone else in this time, someone who'd value her, and not treat her the way her ex has. Let's find out what wisdom's being shared in the comments.
Aline says, "This made me cry. It was a real flashback for me, and almost a look into my future. Maybe that's why I'm crying. We've been together for 10 years, and a couple years ago he cheated with his coworker too. At the time I had no clue, and I trusted him. So when I found out and really thought back, I realized how I missed all the signs. I turned into a different person. I went crazy and wanted to know his whereabouts at all times, and I didn't want to leave the house because I thought he'd bring her over. It was a crazy time in my life. Here I am years later, still not married, but this story made me cry and remember everything. I don't think I'm over it, and it's really changed my feelings for him. I don't know why, but I'm still here. But I'm glad you got away from him. He doesn't deserve a happy ending, and even though Annette told you what happened, I hope the worst for both of them. They don't deserve happiness after putting you through all this. You're stronger than me, so don't ever look back. He doesn't deserve you." Nona Organic says, "Wow, he really messed with your mind. You were trusting to a fault, but what's done is done. You need to go no contact with him going forward. None. If he needs to discuss something with you, it can be done through his mom. And set a date no later than a week from now, by which he must get all of his stuff out of your house. After that date, anything left behind is trash and be done with it. You have so much life, so thank God you found out who he really is before marriage or children. Nona Organic says, wow, he really messed with your mind. You were trusting to a fault, but what's done is done. You need to go no contact with him going forward. None. If he needs to discuss something with you, it can be done through his mom, and set a date no later than a week from now, by which he must get all of his stuff out of your house. After that date, anything left behind is trash, and be done with it.
I feel for OP, I really do. I hope she meets someone soon so she can build a life with someone who won't betray her trust in such a way. I hope you enjoyed today's episode of Coffee and Popcorn, and I can't wait to see you on the next one.